Israelis are tuned to pick up what others are saying about Israel. Recently, I've been picking up more and more bad vibes. They were coming from big organizations such as the UN, from smaller groups such as British and American scientists, and from individuals. I usually don't give too much credence to such bad vibes. As Abba Ibn said, if Algeria introduced a resolution declaring that the earth was flat and that Israel had flattened it, it would pass by a vote of 164 to 13 with 26 abstentions. However, I have to admit that as these bad vibes kept coming in increasing numbers from all directions, I started to wonder, is Israel really as good as I used to believe, or am I missing something? I decided to get to the bottom of it. In the past few months, I thoroughly researched these issues. I have focused on some of the most serious allegations, trying to clarify. Are they facts, or are they just concocted ideas that are treated as truth? I would like to share with you some of my findings. But let me start by telling you a little bit about my experiences as a child during Israel's War of Independence. In my childhood, I lived in Tel Aviv, a couple of blocks away from the central bus station. Like London, Tel Aviv too had double-decker buses. They ran on route number 5. I liked to ride them from time to time and to watch the streets through the treetops. During the week, the station was a busy place, but on Saturdays, the buses were parked somewhere else, and my father used to take me to play in the empty station. In addition to playing ball, I practiced my reading there. I was fascinated by the exotic destination that I read off the signs of the bus stops. Soon, I developed kind of a GPS memory. I could tell that in order to get, for example, to Tveria, you had to pass through Hadera, Afula, and Kfar Tavor. After school, my mother used to take me and my little sister to the park. In the summer, we went to the beach. On Saturdays, the beach was the place to be. That is where everyone meets everyone. You enjoy the sea breeze, the sun, the balmy water, and life in general. I remember where I was in November 29, 1947. I was at home, and my parents and our neighbors were huddling around the radio, following the count of the vote on Resolution Y81 at the United Nations. When the final tally was in, they jumped and screamed from joy. Not only them, you could hear it from all around the neighborhood. The General Assembly approved the partition plan for Palestine, and the State of Israel was born. How did it affect me personally? After that day, I have noticed some changes. I started to hear gunshots and explosions. We took different, longer routes to the park. I saw walls erected in middle of streets to protect the people from Arab snipers from Jaffa. I saw buses armored with metal plates. My father explained to me that this is done so that passengers will not be killed by Arabs who were shooting at them. The entire situation scared me, but at the same time, it also gave me a sense of confidence. There are bad people out there, but they cannot harm us. In my mind, it was like being tucked in bed when it was raining outside. These were the first stages of Israel's War of Independence. The Arabs put Jewish communities, including Jerusalem, under siege. Their plan was to starve the communities and then to run them over. Those armored buses and the convoys were the lifeline to Jerusalem and to many other communities that were under siege. But not all the convoys were able to make it to their destination. The Arabs blocked the roads next to their villages. When they got the word that a convoy was coming, the villagers left their homes and ambushed it. When everything was done, they returned to their homes to go on with their life. Some siege communities, such as Gush Etzion, fell to the Arabs and were erased to the ground. Eventually, roads were opened and sieges were lifted only after the Israeli Defense Forces took over the Arab villages. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared its independence. On May 15, the British left the area and armies of 5 Arab countries invaded Israel. Sirens started to yell, and we, who lived on the 3rd floor, had to rush down the stairs, day or night, to the bomb shelter in the ground floor. I could run by myself. My mother had to carry my sister. Few times these were just false alarms, but on May 18, the yell of the sirens was followed by terrifying explosions. The Egyptian Air Force was bombing the central bus station. I still remember the doors slamming all around the house from the blasts. The next day, my mother packed some clothes, pillows, and blankets and took me and my sister to stay with friends in the countryside. My father stayed behind and continued to go to work. At our friends in the countryside, we found many other people like us. Other than sleeping on the floor and being surrounded by so many people, everything else was almost normal. 2-3 weeks later, we returned to our home. When I grew up, I went to a newly opened park, Gan Atzmaut. I saw there a nice statue overlooking the Mediterranean. I read the plate. It was dedicated to the memory of the 2 pilots, Aaron Shprintzak and Matityahu Sukenik, who fell while fighting off the Egyptian Air Force and Navy. They put an end to the Egyptian air raid and sea raids on Tel Aviv, and with that to my brief experience as a refugee. Since I mentioned refugee, let me talk a little bit about much less fortunate people, the Palestinian refugees.